Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a winter evening in January of 1945. The place is Hatten, France, a small crossroads town in the Alsace region where the snow falls silent and the darkness comes early. This is the story of a man the United States Army deemed unfit for combat, a man whose eyes were too weak to qualify him for service, a man who spent the war peeling potatoes in a military police kitchen, and in 48 hours, that man killed more than 40 German soldiers. One man, one machine gun, one building. 48 hours. The mathematics of survival say this should not have happened. A single infantryman, isolated and unsupported, does not hold ground against armor and infantry for 2 days. The average life expectancy of a machine gunner in sustained combat is measured in minutes, not hours. And yet Master Sergeant Vito Bertoldo, a cook from Decatur, Illinois, with vision so poor he required thick corrective lenses just to navigate a mess hall, did exactly that. The German 25th Panzer Grenadier Division expected Hatten to fall within hours. They brought tanks. They brought veterans of the Eastern Front. They brought the certainty of overwhelming force. What they found instead was a man who had been told his entire life that he was not good enough, and who had decided finally that the world was wrong. It is January 9th, 1945, 22:47 hours, 10:47 in the evening if you prefer. The command post of the American battalion sits in a 2-story stone building on the eastern edge of town. Inside, officers are burning documents. Maps are being rolled. The order has come down: withdraw. The German offensive has broken through. The position is untenable. Everyone is leaving. Everyone except Vito Bertoldo. He has set up a Browning M1919 machine gun in the hallway. The weapon weighs 41 pounds. The tripod adds another 14. Bertoldo is 40 years old. He is not a young man. He is not a rifleman. He is a cook, and he has volunteered to stay behind. The first 88mm shell from the German Panzer tank strikes the building at 22:53 hours. The explosive force is catastrophic. The walls shudder. The ceiling cracks. Vito Bertoldo is lifted off his feet and thrown across the room. His ears are ringing. There is blood on his face. His glasses, those thick lenses that the Army said made him unfit, are cracked but still on his nose. He gets up. He walks back to the machine gun. He resets the tripod. He checks the belt feed, and he waits. Outside, in the snow and the darkness, the German infantry is dismounting from their armored carriers. They are moving toward the building. They believe the shelling has done its work. They believe the position is destroyed. They are about to learn otherwise. Vito Raffaele Bertoldo was born in Decatur, Illinois, in 1903. Decatur is a factory town, soybeans and railroads, the kind of place where a man's value is measured by what he can lift and how long he can work. Vito learned early that he did not measure well. His eyes were the problem. Extreme myopia, the doctors called it. Nearsightedness so severe that without his glasses, the world beyond 10 feet dissolved into shapeless color. In school, the other children called him Mole. In the factory, where he worked the line before the war, the foreman kept him away from the heavy machinery. A man who cannot see clearly is a liability, a danger to himself and others. When the Selective Service began calling men to war in 1941, Vito Bertoldo reported for his physical examination. He wanted to serve. He wanted perhaps to prove that he was not the sum of his limitations. The draft board classified him 4F, medically unfit. They handed him a rejection letter and told him to go home. He did not go home. He argued. He pleaded. He returned to the draft board again and again until finally, in exasperation or perhaps in pity, they relented. He could enlist, they said, but not as a combatant. He could peel potatoes. He could wash dishes. He could serve his country from a field kitchen where his poor eyesight would not get anyone killed. Vito Bertoldo agreed. It was better than nothing. He was assigned to the Military Police Corps and later to the 42nd Infantry Division, the Rainbow Division, so named because its soldiers were drawn from 26 states across the nation. He became a cook. A master sergeant eventually because he was competent and reliable and because the Army needs master sergeants even in kitchens. He served in North Africa. He served in Italy. He peeled potatoes and fried eggs and poured coffee, and if anyone noticed him at all, it was only to wonder how a man with such thick glasses had managed to enlist in the first place. By January of 1945, the 42nd Division was in France, part of the Allied push into Germany. Operation Nordwind, the German counteroffensive, had begun on New Year's Eve. The Wehrmacht was driving into the Alsace region with the goal of recapturing Strasbourg and splitting the Allied lines. The Rainbow Division was tasked with holding the northern shoulder of the offensive. The town of Hatten, a crossroads of no particular strategic value, except that it sat directly in the path of the German advance, became the focal point of the American defense. Vito Bertoldo was still peeling potatoes when the shelling began, but when the order came to evacuate the command post, when the officers began burning maps and preparing to withdraw, Vito saw something the others did not. He saw an opportunity, not to survive, not to escape, but to matter. Hatten sits in the heart of Alsace, 9 miles north of the city of Haguenau. It is flat country, farm fields stretching to the horizon, broken only by scattered woodlots and the occasional rise of ground. In winter, the landscape is white and featureless. There is no cover, no concealment. A man can see for miles, which means a man can be seen for miles. The town itself is unremarkable. Stone buildings with slate roofs, narrow streets designed for ox carts, not armored vehicles. The civilian population had fled weeks earlier when the first shells began falling. What remained were empty houses, frozen streets, and the skeleton crew of American soldiers tasked with holding a position that everyone knew could not be held. The command post occupied a 2-story stone building on the eastern edge of town. It was chosen for its solid construction and its position overlooking the main approach road. The ground floor held the radio equipment and the operations map. The second floor was for sleeping, though no one had slept much since Nordwind began. The building's walls were thick, 18th century stonework designed to last generations. They would prove useful, though not invulnerable. Vito Bertoldo's weapon was the Browning M1919 machine gun. It is worth understanding this weapon because Vito Bertoldo's survival depended on understanding it completely. The M1919 fires the .30 caliber cartridge at a rate of 400 to 600 rounds per minute, depending on how the gunner controls the trigger. Sustained fire will overheat the barrel, which must be changed every 2 to 3 minutes of continuous shooting. The weapon weighs 41 pounds. The tripod adds 14 more. Effective range is 1,000 yards, though accuracy degrades significantly beyond 600. The gun is belt-fed. Each belt holds 250 rounds. A good gunner can change belts in under 10 seconds. A great gunner can do it in 5. Vito Bertoldo had never been trained as a machine gunner. He was a cook, but he had watched, and he had listened. And when the officers evacuated the command post, they left behind 3 ammunition cans. 1,750 rounds, enough for 7 minutes of sustained fire or for many hours of careful, deliberate shooting. Bertoldo positioned the gun in the hallway of the ground floor, facing the main entrance. From this position, he could cover the eastern approach and, by shifting slightly, the street to the north. He moved a heavy wooden table into place and set the tripod on it. The added height gave him a better angle of fire. It also, though he did not know it yet, would save his life. The enemy he faced was the 25th Panzer Grenadier Division. They were not garrison troops. They were not green conscripts rushed to the front in the dying days of the Reich. They were veterans, survivors of the Eastern Front, where they had fought the Red Army through the ruins of Stalingrad and the frozen steppe beyond. They had been pulled west for Nordwind because they were reliable, because they were effective, because they did not break. A Panzer Grenadier Division in 1945 was a combined arms force. Tanks, infantry, artillery, engineers. The tanks were Panzer Mark IVs, reliable workhorses of the Wehrmacht, armed with 75mm main guns and protected by 80mm of frontal armor. The infantry rode in armored half-tracks, protected from small arms fire until the moment they dismounted to assault. The division's doctrine was simple. Use the tanks to suppress defensive positions, then send in the infantry to clear the buildings. It was efficient. It was proven. It had worked 1,000 times before. The 25th Panzer Grenadier Division had earned a reputation in the East for thoroughness. Villages that resisted were not merely captured, they were erased. Hatten was expected to fall within hours. The Americans were overextended. The defenses were thin. The command post, once identified, would be destroyed as a matter of course. No one expected resistance. The 88mm gun was not originally a tank weapon. It began the war as an anti-aircraft gun, the legendary Flak 18, capable of hurling a 20-pound shell to an altitude of 30,000 feet. Someone in the Wehrmacht realized that a weapon capable of penetrating the thin skin of a bomber could also penetrate the thick armor of a tank. By 1945, the 88 was the most feared anti-tank gun in the world. When mounted on a tank, it became something worse. The shell traveled at 2,700 feet per second. At close range, it could penetrate 6 inches of steel. A stone building, even one with 18th century walls, was no obstacle at all. When Vito Bertoldo volunteered to stay behind, the captain in command of the command post looked at him for a long moment. The captain was 26 years old. He had graduated from West Point 3 years earlier. He knew tactics. He knew odds. He knew that leaving a single man, a cook, to cover the withdrawal was sending that man to his death. The captain said, "Can you even see them coming?" Vito adjusted his glasses. The left lens was scratched. The frames were bent from being knocked off his face too many times in too many kitchens. He said, "I'll see them when they're close enough." The captain did not argue. There was no time. The Germans were less than a mile away. The sound of tank engines was already audible over the crump of distant artillery. The captain nodded. He shook Vito's hand. Then he left. The command post emptied. The radio operator carried his equipment out the back. The junior officers followed with the maps and code books. Within 10 minutes, the building was silent except for Vito Bertoldo and the wind coming through the shattered windows. He checked the machine gun one more time. He adjusted his glasses, and he thought about Decatur, Illinois, and a lifetime of being told he was not good enough. Outside, in the frozen streets of Hatten, the first German half-tracks were rolling into position. The infantry dismounted. They moved with the confidence of veterans. They had done this before. The town was theirs. All that remained was the formality of occupying it. Vito Bertoldo waited. His hands were steady. His vision, as always, was poor. But in the hallway of the command post, with 1,750 rounds of ammunition and a Browning M1919, he did not need to see far. He only needed to see far enough. And then the war for Vito Bertoldo became personal. The first contact comes at 2300 hours, 11 o'clock at night. The German infantry approaches the command post in a standard fire and maneuver formation. One squad provides covering fire while another advances. They are cautious but not afraid. The building appears abandoned. The windows are dark. There is no movement. Vito Bertoldo watches them through a gap in the sandbags. He can see their shapes against the snow, dark figures moving in pairs. They are perhaps 70 yards away. At this distance, even with his poor vision, he can see them clearly enough. He waits. The machine gun is loaded. The safety is off. His finger rests lightly on the trigger. The Germans reach 50 yards, then 40. They are speaking to each other now. Vito cannot hear the words, but he can hear the tone. Calm, professional. They have done this 1,000 times. One of them raises a hand, signaling the others to halt. They are preparing to rush the entrance. Vito Bertoldo squeezes the trigger. The Browning roars to life. The sound in the confined hallway is deafening. The muzzle flash is blinding. The weapon bucks against his shoulder, a rhythmic hammering that travels up through his bones. He fires in controlled bursts. 3 seconds on, 2 seconds off. The tracers arc across the snow in lines of red light. The German soldiers fall. Some drop immediately, others stagger, confused, looking for cover that does not exist. The ones still standing begin to return fire, but they are shooting at muzzle flash. They cannot see Vito. They can only see the gun. He empties half the belt, then stops. The silence after the firing is profound. His ears are ringing. The smell of cordite is thick in his throat. Outside, the snow is no longer white. There are dark shapes sprawled in positions that bodies do not naturally assume. He counts 8, maybe 9. The rest have withdrawn. Vito changes his position. He moves to a window on the north side of the hallway, dragging the machine gun with him. It takes 30 seconds. His back protests. The gun is heavy. But when the Germans probe again, they will expect fire from the same position. He will disappoint them. The second probe comes 20 minutes later. This time they use grenades first, hurling them through the ground floor windows. The explosions are sharp and brutal. Shrapnel winds through the air. One fragment strikes the wall 6 inches from Vito's head. He does not flinch. He waits until he hears boots on the cobblestones. Then he opens fire from his new position. The Germans scatter. 3 more fall. The rest retreat into the darkness. Vito realizes something in that moment. They think there are more defenders. One machine gun moving between positions has created the illusion of multiple gunners. He decides to reinforce this illusion. For the next hour, he moves constantly. He fires from the hallway, then shifts to the window, then returns to the hallway. Each time, he fires from a slightly different angle. Each time, the Germans pull back. At 0100 hours, 1 o'clock in the morning, the Panzer arrives. He hears it before he sees it. The grinding of treads on frozen earth. The deep mechanical rumble of the engine. The tank rolls into view slowly, cautiously, its turret traversing left and right as it searches for targets. It is a Panzer Mark IV. Vito recognizes it from the training films he sat through bored in camp. The tank stops 70 yards from the building. The turret swings toward the command post. Vito knows what is coming. There is no time to move, no time to do anything except press himself against the floor and pray that the stone walls will hold. The 88mm gun fires. The shell enters through the front wall and detonates in the hallway. The explosion is not loud. It is beyond loud. It is a physical force that compresses the air and expands it again in a single instant. Vito is lifted off the floor and hurled backward. He strikes the far wall with enough force to crack the plaster. His helmet is gone. His rifle, which was leaning against the doorframe, has vanished. The machine gun is on its side, the tripod twisted. His glasses are still on his face, but the left lens is shattered. Blood is running from his ears. He lies on the floor for 10 seconds, maybe 20. Time has become unreliable. His body is screaming at him to stay down, to crawl out the back, to run. Every nerve is begging for flight. But Vito Bertoldo does not run. He gets to his knees, then to his feet. His legs are shaking, his hands are shaking, everything is shaking. He walks to where the machine gun has fallen. He rights the tripod. He checks the belt. It is intact. The gun itself appears undamaged. He drags the weapon back to the window and sets it up again. Outside, the German infantry is advancing. They think the shell has finished the job. They are moving quickly now, rushing the building while the defenders are stunned. Vito waits until they are 30 yards away, then he opens fire. The Browning still works. The Germans were not expecting this. They scatter again. 2 fall. The rest dive for cover behind a low wall. The Panzer fires again. This shell strikes higher, blowing out the second-floor windows. Debris rains down into the hallway. A ceiling beam cracks and sags. Dust fills the air. Vito keeps firing. He can barely hear the gun over the ringing in his ears, but he can feel it. The vibration, the recoil. He fires until the belt runs dry, then he reloads. His hands are clumsy. The shaking has not stopped. It takes him 15 seconds to seat the new belt when it should take 5. By 0300 hours, 3 in the morning, Vito has a new problem. The machine gun will not stay steady. His hands are trembling too violently from the concussions. Every time he tries to aim, the barrel wavers. He needs to stabilize it. He looks around the ruined hallway and sees the heavy wooden table he used earlier as a firing platform. It is on its side now, blown over by the blast. He drags it back into position. Then he finds wire in the rubble, communications wire torn from the walls, and he uses it to lash the machine gun to the table. He wraps the wire around the barrel sleeve and the tripod legs and the table legs until the whole assembly is rigid. It is crude. It is improvised. But when he tests it, the gun holds steady. The firing continues through the night. The Germans probe. Vito responds. They pull back. They regroup. They probe again. Each time, Vito is waiting. He has learned the rhythm of their attacks. He knows when they will come. He no longer wastes ammunition on suppressive fire. He waits until he can see targets, then he fires in short, precise bursts. His vision is hampered by the shattered lens, but at close range it does not matter. He can see shapes. He can see movement. That is enough. Dawn comes at 0730. The sky turns from black to gray. Vito can see the street now. There are bodies in the snow. He counts 14, maybe more. Some are partially hidden behind the low wall. Others are sprawled in the open. The Panzer is still there, hull down behind a ruined house, waiting. The Germans have not withdrawn. They are regrouping, preparing for another assault. Vito checks his ammunition. He has 5 belts remaining, 1,250 rounds. He rations them carefully, 3 rounds per burst. No more. He drinks water from his canteen. His throat is raw from the dust and the cordite. His face is crusted with dried blood from his ears. His uniform is torn, but his hands, lashed to the machine gun by wire and will, are steady enough. The day passes in a blur of noise and silence. The Germans attack at irregular intervals. Sometimes they use the Panzer to shell the building first. Sometimes they try to infiltrate from the north, using the ruins of adjacent houses for cover. Vito adjusts. He moves when he can. He fires when he must. He creates the illusion of multiple defenders by varying his rate of fire and his position. At one point, a German squad reaches the ground floor entrance. Vito hears boots on the threshold. He swings the gun toward the doorway and fires blind. The boots retreat. By the second evening, January 10th, Vito has been awake for 36 hours. His body is failing. He can feel it. The adrenaline that sustained him through the first night is gone. What remains is something colder, something harder. He is no longer thinking about survival. He is thinking about the next burst, the next target, the next minute. The Germans attack again at dusk. This time they coordinate. The Panzer fires 3 rounds in rapid succession, walking the shells across the face of the building. The structure groans. Cracks appear in the walls. Part of the second floor collapses into the hallway, blocking the northern window. Vito retreats to his original position. The machine gun is still wired to the table. He drags the entire assembly, table and gun and tripod, back to the main hallway. The German infantry rushes the building under cover of the shelling. They are close now, 30 yards, 20. Vito can see their faces. Young men, old men, veterans and conscripts. He fires. The Browning does not stop. It cannot stop. If it stops, they will reach the doorway. If they reach the doorway, it is over. He holds the trigger down for 10 seconds, 15. The barrel glows red in the darkness. The Germans falter. They stop. They retreat. Vito collapses against the wall. The gun is silent. His hands are numb. He looks down and realizes he has fired the last belt. There are no more rounds. 1,750 rounds expended over 48 hours. He waits for the Germans to realize this. He waits for the final assault, but it does not come. The street is quiet. The Panzer has withdrawn. The infantry has pulled back. At 0800 hours on January 11th, the relief column arrives. They are men from the 42nd Division, counterattacking to retake Hatten. They enter the command post cautiously, expecting to find it destroyed. Instead, they find Vito Bertoldo. He is still at the machine gun. The weapon is empty. His hands are still gripping the spade handles. When the sergeant tells him it is over, that he can let go, Vito does not respond. They have to pry his fingers loose. The table wired to the gun has to be cut free with bolt cutters. Outside, in the snow and the morning light, the relief column counts the bodies. 42 German soldiers, confirmed dead within a 100-yard radius of the command post. There are blood trails leading away, suggesting more wounded. The Panzer is gone, but its track marks show where it retreated during the night. 1 man, 1 machine gun, 48 hours. The mathematics finally make sense, though not in any way the textbooks would recognize. Vito Bertoldo held because he decided to hold. The Germans withdrew because they believed they were facing a fortified position with multiple defenders. The truth that a single half-blind cook had stopped an entire division's advance would not be confirmed until after the battle, when intelligence officers interviewed captured German soldiers and pieced together what had happened. Vito Bertoldo is evacuated to a field hospital. His eardrums are ruptured. His hands require stitches. He sleeps for 18 hours. When he wakes, the captain who evacuated the command post is standing by his bed. The captain does not speak for a long moment. Then he says, "You were supposed to buy us 10 minutes. You gave us 2 days." Vito adjusts his glasses. The left lens is still shattered. He says, "I saw them when they were close enough." The battle for Hatten continued for another 2 weeks. The town changed hands 3 times before the Germans finally withdrew on January 21st. By then, Hatten was no longer a town. It was a grid reference on a map. 90% of the buildings were destroyed. The streets were impassable with rubble. The fields surrounding the town were cratered and scorched. 10,000 artillery shells had fallen on an area of less than 1 square mile. But the command post still stood. The stone walls, 18th century craftsmanship designed to last generations, had held. Vito Bertoldo's 2-day stand had given the American forces time to regroup, time to bring up reinforcements, time to stabilize a collapsing front. The strategic value of those 48 hours cannot be measured in yards of ground gained or lost. It can only be measured in what did not happen. The German offensive did not break through at Hatten. The Allied line did not collapse. Operation Nordwind, Hitler's last major offensive in the West, ground to a halt in the frozen fields of Alsace. Vito Bertoldo recovered in a field hospital near Nancy. His eardrums healed, though he would hear a faint ringing for the rest of his life. The cuts on his hands left scars. The Army issued him new glasses. The frames were standard military issue, black plastic and functional, not so different from the ones he wore before. The Medal of Honor citation was written in February. It was approved in March. The medal itself was presented on August 28, 1945, by Lieutenant General Alexander Patch at a ceremony in Salzburg, Austria. The war in Europe had been over for 3 months by then. Vito stood at attention while the citation was read aloud. The words were formal, bureaucratic. They spoke of gallantry and intrepidity and devotion to duty. They did not speak of a lifetime of being told he was not good enough. They did not speak of thick glasses and a 4F rejection letter. They did not speak of the choice he made in a frozen hallway to prove that the world had been wrong about him. The citation reads, in part, he voluntarily remained behind to cover the withdrawal of his unit. For 48 hours, Sergeant Bertoldo held his position, virtually alone, against repeated infantry and tank attacks. His actions prevented the encirclement and possible destruction of his battalion. 42 confirmed enemy dead, 1,750 rounds of ammunition expended, 1 Browning M1919 machine gun wired to a table because the gunner's hands would not stop shaking, 1 cook from Decatur, Illinois, who could barely see past 50 yards without his glasses. After the war, Vito Bertoldo returned to Decatur. He did not speak much about Hatten. When asked, he would say that he did what needed to be done, that any man in his position would have done the same. This was not true, of course. Most men would have withdrawn with the others. Most men would have chosen survival over sacrifice. But Vito believed it, or perhaps he needed to believe it, because the alternative was to accept that he had done something extraordinary. And extraordinary was not a word that had ever been applied to him before. He worked at a printing company. He married. He raised children. He attended Veterans of Foreign Wars meetings and Memorial Day ceremonies. He wore his Medal of Honor on appropriate occasions, but he did not display it at home. It stayed in a drawer, wrapped in the same tissue paper it came in. When his children asked about the war, he told them about the men he served with, the officers who trusted him, the soldiers who relieved him. He did not tell them about the 2 days he spent alone because in his mind, he was never alone. He was surrounded by everyone who had ever doubted him, and he was proving them wrong, 1 trigger pull at a time. Vito Bertoldo died on October 30th, 1980, at the age of 77. He is buried in Graceland Cemetery in Decatur. His headstone is simple. It lists his name, his dates of service, and the medal he earned. It does not list the number of enemy soldiers he killed. It does not describe the 2 days in Hatten. It does not explain that he was a cook, or that his eyes were weak, or that the army tried to reject him. These facts are not carved in stone, but they are carved somewhere deeper, in the record, in the memory of those who knew him, in the example he set for what one man can do when he decides that something matters more than fear. The truth about courage is this: it is not the absence of fear, it is not even the mastery of fear. Courage is the decision that something else matters more. For some men, that something is duty. For others, it is loyalty or love or the protection of those who cannot protect themselves. For Vito Bertoldo, it was simpler and more profound. He stayed in that hallway because for 42 years the world had told him he was not good enough, not strong enough, not capable enough, not worthy enough. And in 48 hours, in a frozen town in France that no longer exists, he proved that every assessment, every rejection, every dismissal had been wrong. He was not less than other men. He was exactly what the moment required: a man with a machine gun and a reason to stay, a man who could see clearly, even through shattered lenses, what needed to be done. The Germans who faced him that January believed they were attacking a fortified position. They reported multiple defenders, heavy resistance, a professional entrenched force. They never learned the truth until after the war, when the records were opened and the story was told. One man, one cook. Eyes so weak the army did not want him. He saw them when they were close enough. And when they were close enough, he made them pay for every yard of ground they thought they had won. In the end, Vito Bertoldo did not hold Hatten because he was a hero. He held Hatten because he was tired of being invisible. And for 2 days, in the darkness and the cold and the unrelenting violence of mechanized war, Vito Bertoldo was the most visible man in France. That is the story, ladies and gentlemen. Remember it well.